My pet peeve is when I get outreach from a product I already use and they don't know that I use it. Like, how annoying is that? And it's just, yeah, they probably don't have access to the signals, so it's not their fault, but it's a really poor experience for your buyer.
Welcome to today's episode of the Sales Soundcheck. I'm delighted to have Sandy Mangat from Pocus here, who heads up marketing. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Rory. Excited to be here.
Brilliant. I mean, I've been following Pocus for a long time. I think if anyone's on LinkedIn or in the world of sales and tech, it's hard to miss you guys. Not just because you've claimed a brilliant emoji and such a strong brand, but I think the movement you're making is pretty powerful. So excited to dig into that today. I think that all starts with, how would you describe PLG?
How would I describe PLG? Okay, so I think that we've overcomplicated the definition of PLG a lot. And I think that's why you see all these different variations of PLG out there and all these different definitions. I think when you boil it down to its simplest, it's really about reducing friction for your customer. And that can manifest in many different ways. And it doesn't always mean that your product has to be self-serve. It can mean that the expansion motion, the upsell motion, those things feel more self-serve. Your acquisition motion doesn't have to be self-serve. And I think what's happened is we conflate PLG equals self-serve. And I don't think that's how most companies are actually executing on PLG. I think PLG really does come down to reducing friction for your end users, reducing friction for your customers in the process of buying your product, and then ultimately being more tuned into the customer's journey and really taking their lead. So following their lead versus like pushing kind of your agenda onto them, which is what a sales-led motion can often feel like.
Interesting. And I think PLG is a term that most people are getting pretty familiar with. But then there's the emergence of PLS, product-led sales. I'd love to hear your take on that too for the audience.
Yeah. So one thing that we've noticed with all of our customers and the impetus for building Pocus was all of these amazing viral PLG companies touted like, we did all of this without having a sales team. It was like the product sells itself and there's no one else involved. And we know that that is just absolutely not true. Not only is sales involved, but marketing's involved. There's still things that you have to do in order to get your product into the hands of your customers. But what was happening with these, especially like really viral products like a Slack or a Calendly, is that there was these kind of like inherent network effects and virality. And so they just like caught like wildfire inside one organization. And then it was kind of, you saw that multiplying across many, many different teams. But what does happen with all of those companies is you reach a plateau. And depending on how much virality you have, like if you're relatively low virality, you're going to hit that plateau much faster than some of those like super viral companies. And at that point, you really need to start to think about layering in the sales motion and how you're going to capitalize on these self-serve users in order to expand them, upsell them, and continue to get like that wall-to-wall enterprise deployment. So when we think about product-led sales, it's all about how do you layer in humans at the right moments by looking for the right signals from your product users and looking at their usage and their behavior and their customer fit in order to determine like, where do I want to deploy my sales resources in order to help guide this customer towards an expansion or guide this customer towards a new plan, or maybe it's a cross sell to an adjacent product. Because especially as you move further up market, and this is another reason why companies would do this, when you're moving out of SMB and now you're all of a sudden selling into the enterprise value proposition and sales cycle looks very different. And so PLS is really there to help bridge that gap.
Love it. It's a very good definition. And then the two together, why does Pocus exist?
Yeah. So Pocus exists because what happens is when you have a PLG motion over here, and then maybe you brought on a sales team and they're over here and they're probably working in Salesforce, but your PLG motion, all your product data lives in a data warehouse. Oftentimes, what we were seeing is that these motions were running in parallel, and you really don't get the benefit of all of this valuable product usage data if you're running these motions in parallel. You really want to harmonize them and bring them together and create this hybrid motion where you're leveraging, your valuable kind of like self-serve users, your high potential self-serve users, and equipping your sales team with that valuable data about them so that they can make, informed decisions about where they want to spend their time. And so they're not spinning wheels chasing after cold customers when they could have this like incredible source of warm leads that they could outbound to and drive pipeline that way instead. And so Pocus exists to bridge that gap. And the way that we think about Pocus today is really even going beyond just product usage data. There's all of these intent signals that exist within an organization. And product usage is one type of intent signal, but over time, as customers have been using the Pocus product, they've been bringing in different types of intent signals to run their playbooks. And so now we really see ourselves as like this central place where you can bring all of your intent signals, whether it's product usage, marketing data, community data, whatever it may be, even third-party signals, and orchestrate playbooks that are going to save your reps time so that they're focusing on the right leads at the right time, and also give them really valuable information to personalize their outreach. It's like that combination of relevance and personalization. So we surface the signals that help reps make themselves relevant, and then they use that data to also then personalize their outreach.
Really interesting. And I asked that question 100% knowing the value of Pocus and everything you guys do. And I used to work at Hotjar, and I just wish we had Pocus back then. Like, we were very fortunate with the number of inbound leads and the amount of customers that we had all on a free plan. Fortunately, Hotjar offered that. But I think we noticed at one point a very famous taxi company, I won't say the name of, had about 40 different accounts. And, just the insights, the signals, it was so manual to pull those together. So it's very, very exciting to see the kind of trajectory on the companies that you're working with. And I guess based on what you've seen, those companies that you're now working with, there's some incredible brands there, like ClickUp, for example. How are you educating them in terms of product-led sales? Or what do you think is a good product-led sales motion? Certain behaviors or characteristics within a team that you think sets them above the rest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think enablement is actually a huge piece of what we focus on internally at Pocus. It's not just about selling a product, but we are helping organizations transform their go-to-market. And with that comes a lot of, change management and a lot of enablement. I will say that all of our customers, I think, are really incredible at this. They put a lot of effort into enablement because they realize how important this is. And then we also have the benefit that many of them were doing this themselves internally using DIY solutions for a while before Pocus came. So we benefit from learning a lot from them as well about how they think about rolling out a PLS motion. There are a few things that we've learned along the way, especially if you're rolling out a tool like Pocus or rolling out a PLS motion for the first time. Say you're even just like getting these signals and putting them into a spreadsheet and you want to send them to your sales team. It's always helpful to kind of form a tiger team and have the tiger team have representation from kind of like all the people that you would expect to use that those signals or a tool like Pocus, as well as the executive stakeholders and then your ops resources. So head of sales, rev ops, then you probably want like a frontline manager, like a BDR manager. And then you actually want the AE and SDRs that will potentially use those signals. And you want to be very selective about how you choose that tiger team. I think it's important to choose folks that are natural evangelists because they're going to help make that motion more successful. because they're going to be excited about it. And then they're going to tell their fellow SDRs and AEs like, hey, I've been using these signals and I've been able to book more meetings and just become like the megaphone for it. So I think being like very intentional about that Tiger team and your rollout is a key insight that we had when we did our first kind of like large scale enterprise rollout. The team at Miro did this super well, where I think now Miro has become a bit of a blueprint for us internally, and how we, if teams come to us and they are kind of like, we don't know how to do a rollout, Miro is like a great benchmark for us to go back to because they did it so well. The other aspect that I think is important is making sure that you are working really closely with whoever is going to manage the workspace on the customer side. And it's really like training the trainer. So we spend a lot of time with the enablement folks. We spend a lot of time with the RevOps folks and the workspace admins who are going to be really the ones like stewarding this tool. And so we kind of like treat them like an extension of our team. They get very involved. And I think part of our success has been like being really responsive to their needs and their feedback. So getting on top of it really quickly and making sure that they feel like we are partners to them in this and not just a vendor that's going to give them a tool and then walk away. And then we continue to invest in education. So the community that we've built, the content that we put out, we just launched a on-demand product-led sales course. So we're continuing to put a lot of investment into education around not just PLS, but like modern go-to-market in general. So advice on what type of profile should you be hiring? Like, what is the modern seller data-driven profile look like? How do you set up your first sales assist team? How do you take more of a crawl, walk, run approach? Like I mentioned, maybe you do want to start with just a spreadsheet before you roll out something like Pocus. So all of that type of content is really, really top of mind and a high priority for the team. And we're just consistently trying to churn it out.
And it kind of reflects like what you said at the start, in that when someone says, oh, it's a PLG company and they've, it's self-serve and they've gone through this viral success, behind the scenes, there's a lot of enablement and there is a lot of human touch points. I guess that's almost kind of what you're saying. You're a tool for product-led sales teams, but at the same time, Pocus is super easy to use. But there's a bit of education, there's a bit of category creation to a certain degree and enablement that's needed. So that's, I'm guessing, like a learning that you've experienced and seeing other companies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this goes back to what you asked in the beginning. There are different flavors of PLG, and what you see as PLG, like a Calendly's version of PLG, may not be a fit for you because everyone's product is different. And it really does come down to a lot of different things. I think the primary one in my mind is always complexity. How complex is it for you to get started with this product? Calendly, I can log in and I can use it without any instruction pretty much. But there are a ton of other products. Most other products, I would say like 98% of products, require some level of hand-holding. You need, documentation to get started. You may need an actual human to help you get started, especially if you're integrating with any important systems, like for us, the data warehouse. People aren't just going to hand that over, especially not enterprises. Then the size of company that you're targeting, if you're targeting mid-market or enterprise, a PLG acquisition motion is not likely to be right for you. And then what you mentioned around category, how mature is your category? Is it something that's really well understood? Is it something new? The newer it is, the less likely a PLG acquisition motion is going to be super successful unless you are layering in that human touch. So let's say, I think like Gen AI is a good example of this. So there's a lot of AI products. Some of them are really easy to get started with, but it's easy to drop off because the value is not necessarily well understood yet. So for a Gen AI company, they may have a somewhat viral seeming acquisition motion, but they probably have a really hard time when it comes to adoption and retention. And so if a Gen AI company came to me, I would say, invest in a sales assist motion. You need humans in the loop in the onboarding process. You need to be really involved in making sure that you're getting that initial adoption in the first 30 days. And then maybe PLG would help with the expansion and upsell motion, because once the adoption is there, then you probably don't have to put as many like human resources onto the expansion motion, because maybe there's more natural expansion that happens without a lot of human touch points. But figuring that out requires you to really map out your customer journey, and then also think about all of these external factors like category maturity, your ICP, the size of company that you're targeting, and then make a decision of which flavor of PLG is going to be right for you.
Yeah, it's not one size fits all.
No.
People might think that from the outside. And a term that sort of popped up quite a few times in this conversation is signals. And you mentioned intent data as well. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear your take on why intent data has become so top of mind for so many go-to-market leaders right now, and the different types of intent data and how that accompanies the data that Pocus can surface so well.
Yeah, I think intent is having a bit of a rebrand and like revolution. So I remember 10 years ago thinking about intent as just 6 cents. Like when I thought intent, I thought 6 cents. And what that meant was you're getting company level buyer intent information. And it was a bit of a black box, honestly. You don't really know what's underneath that buyer intent. You just know, hey, there's 10 accounts that are showing buying intent. I should probably, prioritize those for my ABM efforts. I should prioritize those for ads, whatever it might be. And I think what has happened, I think product-led sales and product-led growth have really accelerated this, or kind of shown a light on it. Product usage data is just a form of intent data. But it's a first-party intent signal because you own the data. And something like a 6 cents is this like third-party intent data, and it's about the company level, whereas the first-party data that you have about product usage is both about users, it's about accounts, it's about workspace. Like you can get a lot more granular. And I think that what that sparked is a realization that there are probably third-party intent signals that we could be getting access to that give us a level of granularity that's below the 6 cents telling us that it's a account that's ready to buy. I think what's accelerating this is AI. So the ability to now gather all this like unstructured data and scrape it from the internet to give you even more signals of intent, I think is accelerating everyone's excitement around intent. And I would say that there are a few kind of like use cases that we're really excited about at Pocus. So job switchers, I think, is an exciting one, and we just launched a product for that. And website visitors is another one. I know there's some great tools out there that do that, like Warmly and Koala. And there are like a long tail of other signals that exist: community data, marketing data. And I think what is the struggle there is that there's a lot of noise. So how do you actually decode which signals are going to matter and really and you can't really understand that unless you are bringing all those signals into one place and trying to measure them up against each other. Or maybe it's a combination of signals that actually helps you identify the best moment of relevance, like the perfect trigger for your sales team to reach out. But I think the first step is really just building the muscle around like awareness of these signals for your sales team. So they need to know that they exist and that they're available to them. And then you need to go into, okay, how do we experiment our way into figuring out which of these signals are going to be most successful in converting towards whatever goal I have in mind. And so, yeah, that's a big focus for me is talking to teams who are doing this well and trying to understand what are the signals that they're prioritizing. But again, like we said, there is no one size fits all. Like a signal that works for Pocus is not going to be a signal that works for your team or any other team. And I think there is like a experimentation process that needs to be run in order to really figure that out.
Definitely. It's exciting. It's a bit scary at the same time when you get told that a specific person's visited your website. Like, do they know that they've been tracked and how and things like that? But it does make for better conversations. Like, we see that. We use intent data and it's incredibly powerful. And intent data, it's valuable across the entire customer journey, not just outreach and getting them onto a demo and converting them from free to paid and things like that. It's there's continuous education that can happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's my pet peeve is when I get outreach from a product I already use and they don't know that I use it. Like, how annoying is that?
We've all been
and
there.
it's just, yeah, they probably don't have access to the signals, so it's not their fault, but it's a really poor experience for your buyer. I liken it actually to what has been already happening in B2C for decades around kind of like personalization of ads that you get served. You know, I search for a toothbrush. Next thing you know, everything I'm seeing is toothbrush related. And some people find that really creepy. And some people will always find that really creepy and they're more privacy first. I personally don't mind it because it's helping, it's helping me ultimately. If I'm in the market for a new toothbrush, I want to be served ads for the latest and greatest. And maybe one of them will pique my interest and I can click on it and potentially buy it.
I'm a big fan too. And I think the world of B2B has changed from a buyer's perspective. If you think, like you said, being a consumer, you can have food delivered to you within 5 minutes. You don't need to cook anymore. You can one-click checkout and have something arrive at your doorstep the next day. You don't need to search for anything anymore because it's surfaced to you based on your conversations and what you're searching elsewhere and things like that. It's incredibly easy being a consumer. Like, no wonder we're so lazy these days. But then you go into the world of B2B and you want to buy something and it's just a nightmare. There's so much choice. There's overwhelming information. It takes forever. It's complex security. And intent data and the right signals people are given access to the product make for a much cleaner, more seamless and relevant journey as well. I think it's a fair way to put it. And I guess on that, you're using Pocus, I'm sure, with your own customers, seeing how they're using it and things like that. We have the same with Trumpet. Have there been learnings from seeing your customers use your tool that you've now implemented in your go-to-market strategy and your playbook?
Yeah. Well, so we use Pocus internally as well, inspired by our customers to use our own product. So we don't have a PLG product. So we have a very sales-led motion for all the reasons that we already discussed. But I would say that we have a product-led kind of post-sales motion or CS motion. So we use Pocus for that. So we have playbooks around when we have renewals upcoming or there's specific kind of, usage metrics that we're tracking that if we see a dip in them, that's usually not a good sign. And so we want to stay on top of it. Or on the flip side, there are certain usage metrics that signal to us that our customer is starting to use Pocus in a different way. And maybe there's opportunity to go in there and do an expansion. A basic signal that we track is obviously seat utilization. We're a seat-based product. And so understanding like how many invites have gone out and how many people have actually accepted those invites and then running campaigns based on that through our CSMs is an important playbook that we run. And we get a lot of inspiration from our customers on that because we do have a few customers where it's both their sales and their CS team in Pocus. And so we're constantly getting inspiration from them. And then that helps us, continue to build even more empathy for what they're experiencing with Pocus. I wish we did it even sooner because you uncover things in that process, like little bits of friction that you don't think should be there. And then all of a sudden it's prioritized much faster on the roadmap by the product team. Once you show them like, hey, if we're experiencing this friction, imagine what it's like for our customers. It's been really great using Pocus. And one of the things I'm personally excited about is with these now other intent signals that we're bringing in, I think we're going to start using Pocus for our own like pipe gen outbound as well. We've already experimented with that a little bit, and I think it's really promising. So I'm super excited about building that and experimenting some more.
Nice one. I'm excited to hear how it goes. The last question for me before we wrap up. How do you think marketing can effectively work with the sales team who are running a PLS motion?
Yeah, great question. I think that there's obviously this is like regardless of whether you're a PLS or not, you need to have shared goals. And if you don't have shared goals, then that partnership is really hard to solidify and break down because you need to be working towards the same things from different angles. And like one step below the shared goals is then shared understanding of ICP, target market. I think figuring out how marketing can be helpful to sales and sales can be helpful to marketing and like really having the conversation around that is important. So in my view, marketing should be having a lot of input into definitions around ICP, having a big say in the types of playbooks that the reps are running. So down to the messaging. And then sales really should be having a lot of conversations with marketing about what's working, what's not working, and providing that feedback into, hey, this messaging's not resonating, or we're actually not seeing a lot of success with this particular target segment or this ICP. Like, let's experiment. So I think there's a lot of partnership around experimentation and playbooks, but it doesn't happen unless you have those shared goals.
Great summary. Cool. Thank you for coming on the show today. We wrap up with 3 very quick fire questions, and they are a podcast that you'd recommend, someone that you think we should get on the show, and then a tool that you've seen in the market, whether it's sales related or marketing, that you think everyone should go and check out.
Great. I listen to every episode of the First Round podcast in depth. I think it's always such a I take notes when I listen to that podcast because it's always really, really deep, like tactical advice from operators who have been there and done that. So if you're an early stage marketer or just anyone at an early stage company, I think in depth is top tier. What was the second and third question, Rory?
The second was, who should we get on the Sales Soundcheck?
Oh my gosh, I have so many recommendations here. There's a ton of people I could give you. Can I give you 2?
Go for it.
Okay. Francesca, she's head of marketing at Oso. And prior to that was at Sneak and MongoDB. She's incredible, knows so much about building a developer go-to-market, which I think is, really interesting. And I feel like developer tool companies are often ahead of B2B kind of like enterprise SaaS. So Francesca, big recommend. And then Alfie, who just started a company called Toolflow. Prior to that, he was at Spendesk in go-to-market roles, really like built out sales teams. But now he's taking what he's seen and building an AI company. And I think so if you're interested in learning more about AI, I feel like Alfie's a great person to have on.
I'll check him out. And then the final one was a tool that you'd recommend. I'm guessing Pocus, Toolflow, but maybe a third.
Yeah, Pocus for sure, Toolflow for sure. They don't need this recommendation, but I love Canva. And not just because they're a Pocus customer, but because I am a Canva power user and I am obsessed with their product. And I think what they've done for design is what I hope I can do with Pocus for data.
And they've got an incredible founder who I think deserves even more praise than she gets. But
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. And we'll hopefully chat again soon.
Thanks so much, Rory. Appreciate you having me on.